Hello, and welcome back to this next module/chapter of consumer behavior. I'm Dr. Greer, and I want to continue on this week with just talking very briefly, hopefully a lot shorter than the last video, about subcultures in American society and how they relate to consumer behavior. So I'm actually going to skip through most of this chapter because I'm just going to expect you to read it in the book. But I do want to touch on some key points really quickly here. So let's go ahead, and once again, we're in the same framework. This isn't the only framework. This is a framework. We're in that external influences, and we're just pushing down to more and more of a actual micro level from external influences aspect of this. So there's a lot here for learning objectives. I'm actually going to skip 2 through 5, and then so we'll just talk about 1 and then 6 and 7, and just briefly touch on the 2 through 5. So a subculture, what is it? What does it have to do with consumer behavior? First off, a subculture is a segment of a larger culture whose members share distinguishing values and patterns of behavior. All right, so what does that mean exactly? Well, we create, we're going to get more into this later on, a self-identity. And part of that self-identity has to do with different types of subcultures, whether that be an ethnicity, a gender, a location, a product, and we'll talk about our family, like there's all these different things. And we're going to dissect all of those as we go through this class. But what we do is we identify with a core culture, and within that culture, we identify with a subculture. So let me just kind of break this down in a really brief, like generic example. Let's say that you are proud to be an American, right? So you're like, I'm an American, all right. And then let's say, and I love the NFL. I love football. Football is where it's at. And then I can come down to even more of a subculture. So now I'm a football person that probably wants to be talked to about football. Now, what if I said I'm a Patriots fan? Ooh, people cringed and some people did. But notice that like all of a sudden, it's not just the NFL. Now I'm a Patriots fan. What if I was to sit there and tell you that I'm a Tom Brady fan? So I like quarterbacks that are winners in the NFL, who might have cheated or not cheated. I don't want to get into that right now. But I'm just saying Tom Brady, quarterback of the Patriots, in the NFL, proud to be an American, right? So I've dug down deeper and deeper into that. Now, at any point, I could have a split. Maybe you're more of if we're going to say you are a sports person, maybe you're more of an NBA person. And so you are like, okay, so I'm an NBA fan. And then I'm a jazz fan. Okay, now you've set yourself into a group. And actually, that puts you in a subculture of Western Conference versus Eastern Conference. And then you could say, oh, I really like Donovan Mitchell. Okay, so you're like, okay, here you go. Because I like Donovan Mitchell, do I like to buy Adidas or Nikes? Right? And so Donovan has his own Adidas shoe. Would that pull me into that Adidas category and almost help me build up that subculture also? So notice that there's all these different ways, and I just want us to know that we do this to ourselves. We create this as consumers, and it's great, but we just want to know about it as consumer behavior people in marketing. Now, there are lots of ethnic subcultures, and one of the things that I do not like in this class is to go through and do a bunch of stereotypes. So I'm going to say go ahead and read the book. I think a lot of it is their opinion. I'm not in love with all of it. I think that there's some good information in here, but I also think there's some stereotypical information. So I'm just going to pass through all of this, but just realize that each subculture has its own members and they have shared behaviors, and it could create a buying pattern. And I think that's the best way to put it. It could create a buying pattern. And so that's what we want to look at. And in fact, when we look at this ethnic subculture and consumption, we can see that based on this survey done in 2010 in Costa Mesa, California by Experian Information Systems, white people are more likely than average to drink Diet Colas, and Hispanic people are less likely. And African American people are the least likely in this group of 3 to drink that. So if we had a Diet Coke commercial, would we necessarily want to air that on a Hispanic or African American TV show or website? That's probably not going to be as effective as a marketer as if we did it on a predominantly white platform, let's just say. And this isn't to mean, I just want to make sure I'm being clear, like that's not saying we're going to go out to like an alt-right or nationalist website and post a Diet Coke ad. It just means that what is the ethnicity of the people that normally are visiting this this website or watching this video. So anyway, there's lots of those little things. I'm going to jump through all of these because you can read this in your book. And then I want to get to religion. Okay, so America is basically a secular society according to the author of this book. And that is our education system, government, and political processes are not controlled by a religious group. And most people's daily behaviors are not guided by strict religious guidelines. So we can see this in other countries, but America has a separation of church and state. And that means that a lot of people individually are religious, but we don't let that religion influence or mandate to others what they do in their lives. So there are a number of religious subcultures, though, in America. And I think that religion is important and directly influences the behaviors of many Americans. So I would just say we live in Utah Valley in a religious subculture. And I tell all my other classes all the time also, we have to be very careful as marketers to not think that our religious subculture is the rest of America. And it doesn't mean that there's any good or bad from either side. It just means that when we are marketing to Utah County, Utah, we might not be marketing to San Bernardino, California, or Orlando, Florida. There's just different attitudes and beliefs. Now, when I lived in California, which I've done most of my life, if I was to go ask somebody what religion they were, it was a pretty good chance I was going to hear that they were Catholic. And so it was pretty well known. Like I would just say, like if I was in a room full of 30 or 40 people, I was typically the only member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints there in California. Now there's exceptions, and sometimes you didn't. If I was at church, everybody was that. But I'm just saying, like that was an interesting juxtaposition to coming here to Utah now. And now if I said, who in the room is Catholic, I'd probably get one, maybe 3 or 4 Catholics in the room. And so it totally inverted my normal paradigm of the world. Now, good, bad, or indifferent, it's an interesting piece to look at. You know, we can analyze and say, okay, how do I now market in this subculture? And that's great. So that's just something we want to think about. There's a lot of Christian subcultures that are happening in America. I would say the biggest is Roman Catholic, followed up by Protestant, and then born-again Christians. And so, but you notice that they're all Christian, all right? So that's one of the major foundational pieces of American subculture. If we were to look at non-Christian subcultures, we have Jewish, Muslim, and Buddhist. We have large pockets of all of these. I know if you were to visit certain areas in certain towns, you would find all these different religions. So that's kind of cool that we can have that and it doesn't have to rule everybody and that we can have that kind of freedom. But just realize that there are expectations and there are cultural norms that we talked about not violating for each of these subcultures, and that's one of the things we want to remember. So regional subcultures arise as a result of climate conditions. So maybe it's colder, so people ski or wear Patagonia, or maybe it's warmer, so they surf and they wear O'Neill. Natural environment and resources, maybe there's a desert, so people are out doing motocross or something like that. There's different characteristics of the various immigrant groups that have settled in each region. So, like, I'd love to tell you that the Mexican food here is as good as it is in San Diego, but it's just not. You know, there's way more restaurants. We're so close to that border. There's so many people that have come to the United States in San Diego that you can get pretty good Mexican food anywhere. I'm still looking for a really good spot. I've found 1 or 2 of them here. But also we have significant social and political events that happen to create subcultures. Well, I would even say teams, you know, and how we view ourselves and how we talk in the different dialects. And if I was to say, what does somebody from California sound like? Oh my gosh, you know, like there's all these stereotypes of the Valley Girl or whatever from California. If I was to say from the South, y'all come back now, you hear, and is that Texas or is that Tennessee or is that Georgia, or, you know, like we all have these like thoughts in our heads of how people sound in different areas. If I was to say up north in like Minnesota, we all have these even ways that we speak. So we just want to be aware of that. And in here, in this this study that was done in 2010, they talk, once again, 100 is the average, but like if whether or not you're a college football fan in the Northeast, you're less likely to be a college football fan. But in the Midwest and the South, you're way more likely to be a college football fan. And in the West, you're not as likely. So we have like North and or East and West, and they just kind of don't care about it. And then in the middle, there's a ton of college football. We can see that. How likely are you to order Domino's pizza? So you're less likely in the North, the Midwest, or the West. But in the South, you're more than likely to be ordering Domino's. Whether or not you read the New Yorker, the magazine, 141 is the score for the Northeast, and the Midwest is like, what do we care? Like they're just less interested in that. So these are always just interesting to me to just see that we can have these regional subcultures. Take a look, read the chapter. This is one of those pieces that you might take a different approach if you're in the Northeast to your product versus in the West, or even in Utah County. And, there could be religious ramifications, there could be racial and ethnic ramifications based on that. And so you just want to be thinking about those things as you prepare your marketing plan. I really appreciate this. I hope you're studying hard. We have a big comprehensive test coming up, and we'll get Proctorio all set up for the class, and then you can take your test. And I look forward to seeing you, and I'll talk to you later. Thanks.